Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Now, if you're enjoying the show, I need you to do me a quick little favor and leave us a rating and review. I want to hear what you love about the show, but also anything that can make it work for your investing goals. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. We've got a fun one today. We're going to be talking to my guy, Tim Vest. Tim Vest has more than 15 years in real estate and development. Now, from partnering with developers to developing raw land, purchasing and investing in single-family rentals, fix and flips, multifamily, and hotels. Now, he is currently an owner and partner on multiple apartment communities. And outside of real estate, Tim has a passion for technology, music, sports, travel, and a very active lifestyle. Let's welcome to the show, Tim Vest.
Hey, John, thanks for having me on, man. Good to see you again.
Absolutely, Tim. Listen, it's great to have you on here. I know a lot about your journey, but for our listeners who don't, why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Yeah. So my real estate journey specifically started around 2006. I ran across a couple of guys I was working with who were investing in real estate in Canada and then and doing some land flips. And it really kind of piqued my interest. I'd always had an interest in real estate. So I started talking to them about that and got into land investing with them. We were taking raw land and repurposing it, which is really popular, especially, in the recent today. But got into doing that. That went really well till about 2008. I think we all know what happened around 2008 and 9. Learned some good lessons, and then got into single family fix and flips. Did that for a while, and then pivoted into multifamily about 4 years ago, and have been actively going after that for the last couple of years. That's kind of where I'm at now. Always looking for things in the multifamily space, the residential space. And today I have, close to a little over 900 units under management. Some of that, most of that's multifamily. I do have some mixed use properties in there where I have some retail on the first floor and residential above that. Love those as well. And that triple net thing's pretty cool sometimes, man.
I love it, man. Hey, listen, great insights, and I appreciate you sharing a little bit more on your background. You talked about investing in raw land, getting started. And for those folks who don't fully understand raw land, right, you're talking about buying something that is truly just a raw piece of land, but then getting it ready for development. So you're not actually doing the development yourself. No. You're just going through and doing whatever needs to be done to the site and getting it zoned and everything else. But just give me a little more context of, like, as an investor of raw land, what were you doing? And then did you sell it to a developer or did you hold on to it? What's that process?
Yeah, so we had a couple of things that we would do. A couple of them we would hold on to. I had a really, really nice marshfront property down in South Carolina. That one, the plan on that was to hold on to it and develop it ourselves. But the majority of what we did was in the North Carolina mountains. And like you said, literally raw land. Some of this stuff didn't even have road access. So we would go in, get the land, get it rezoned for residential of some sort. And a lot of times we had a builder already lined up on the side. We would work with a few builders, tell them this is what we're looking at. They would give us kind of their criteria. So we'd go find it, do the work to get it repurposed and ready for them to come in and do the development. And in those cases, you kind of know what the developer is going to pay up front. So that made it very easy to go in and negotiate on the front end, right? So we'd go in, the developer might pay $10,000 an acre, and we'd go and try to get it at $2,000 an acre. Do the zoning with the county, and then get it to a point where the developer could come in and just take it from there.
Got it, man. Thanks for sharing that. I think it's helpful for us to understand these different investing strategies. You started there. You mentioned 2008 happened, so kind of wiped out that business. Then you got into flipping houses before eventually getting more into commercial multifamily and some other assets there. For the last 4 years, you've been focused on multifamily. Just talking about that progression, right? So I'm going from raw land to rentals and flipping to multifamily. What led you ultimately into this space?
Yeah. So coming out of 2008 and nine, that didn't go well. The one of the things that I learned coming out of that was time is your friend. Especially when it comes to real estate, right? If you can hold on to things, if you can ride through a rough patch, if you can kind of get through the rough patch, then you tend to come out okay on the other side. But to do that, you really need cash flow. Um, Raw land does not typically cash flow. There's some ways to make it work, but in the strategies we were deploying, that wasn't our business model. It was all based on equity and basically flipping and getting paid in chunks of money, right, rather than monthly returns. So what happened when we came to 2008 and nine? Lending dried up, builders stopped building. We were left with land that was producing no income. Coming out of that, one of the things I quickly said was I need to find things that cash flow, right? Like if I could have cash flowed, I could have ridden out the downturn. So got into the single family stuff, those cash flow. I was flipping, and what I tell people a lot, just kind of a rule of thumb, is I'd flip three, I'd sell two, keep one, and build a portfolio that way. When you have that consistent cash flow coming in, you can kind of ride out those bumps. And then, as we moved out of the single family stuff into the multifamily, kind of the same principle, right? Like always look for things that are producing consistent cash flow. You can ride out most recessions, you can ride out most downturns as long as you're consistently getting cash flow. And really, guys, that's not something that's like specific to real estate. That's really just any business, right? One of my mentors early on, he's like cash flow is king, right? I can survive almost anything as long as I got cash flow. And so that was one of the big pieces, one of the lessons learned coming out of 08 and 09, and one of the reasons that we pivoted into the single families and the multifamilies.
I think that's a great insight, right? And it's a reminder for a lot of people. And you hear things like "cash flow is king," right? It's a great saying. It's cliche to a bit at this point, but there's a reason these things become cliches, right? And it's because there's truth and there's value in it. And
Right.
we are at a time right now where this is really being tested because there's lots of different investing strategies that you can employ. But I love the way you said, if you're going through a rough patch, but you have cash flow, you can get through it. And that's something that you want to make sure is that you do have that cash flow. You are investing in income producing or income generating assets. And that's what kind of got you caught up on the raw land, is that raw land doesn't make money. I
Right.
mean, it grows in value, but it only makes money when you sell it. It's not generating income. So you want that thing that is making money every month so you can decide when to sell or when to exit, as
Yeah.
opposed to you needing to sell in order to make that return, but then having some factors on the back end slow down your options there. So I just think it's a great reminder for people to understand like why we always talk about, income producing assets, and multifamily isn't the only asset class that
No.
produces income. But one of the reasons we like it is because of that income generating capacity. Let's talk more about, you mentioned the 4 years, but before I go there, you were doing a lot of this stuff. Were you full time in real estate at this time, or was this kind of something you were doing on the side?
Yeah, I was doing it on the side.
Okay.
I started out completely doing it on the side, maybe putting 10 hours a week into it, that kind of thing. Had a full-time job. In fact, I had a full-time job up until, well, about 8 months ago, actually. Now, it did get to a point where, people talk about, are you full-time in real estate? Well, I was certainly doing more than 40 hours a week, even while I had a full-time job
Yeah.
towards the
Yeah.
end there. But yeah, no, I was doing it on the side for a while. In the last 8 months, has been completely, real estate's been a full-time job for me, traditionally, in the traditional sense, for sure.
And I think too, it's incredible that you were able to grow and to change kind of your strategies and see that growth and success. while working a full-time job. And, that's something that I think is a challenge many people face. So, as you made that transition to multifamily and left your job and, are full-time in real estate, solely dedicated to real estate, talk to us a little bit about how you're able to make that happen. I mean, did you have a number in mind where you said, hey, once I hit 10,000 in, passive income a month, I'm gonna quit? Or just give me a little bit more about kind of your journey and your approach to making that transition from, working the day job, basically being full time in your day job and real estate, to finally being able to walk away from that W-2.
Yeah, so I'll be fully transparent here. So I was in a better position than a lot of people are, in the sense that with my full time job, I had a boss at the time who I could be completely open and honest with. He knew I was kind of at a point where I was burned out with my career. I had a 23-year career in technology, and I was kind of burnt out with it. And I was just honest with him, talked to him about this is where I'm pivoting to. And he was one of those guys that's like, hey, listen, like, I don't care if it takes you 5 hours or 40 hours a week to do your job. Just get your job done. So I'd built a really good team where I was. My team pretty much handled everything in the day to day, and I was more of the kind of the fullback, removing roadblocks for my team, if you will. So the last 2 years, I was able to put more and more time into the real estate stuff and less time into my W-2. But again, I had a really good boss that understood where I was trying to go. But as far as the goals, I set a clear goal of I wanted to create 6,000 a month in my with my real estate investments, and over time actually exceeded that point by the time I left my W-2. And primarily did that through a couple different ways. I have what I call my real estate stack, which a lot of people look at like one thing and they say, hey, what does this produce for me? I tend to stack them up and show this property in 2022 or 2023 or 2024 is going to produce this amount of income for me in that year, right? So I line them all up, and that way I know in any given year what all of my assets are going to bring during that year. And as long as I'm, within that range, I know what I'm, can count on, if I break it down on a monthly basis. So sometimes it's not necessarily just actual income in a given month. It's more of, hey, this is what I'm going to make in this year. And, I budget for that. Right.
Yeah. I think there's two things that jump out to me that are really cool, right? The two things that jump out to me, one, you had a relationship with your boss where you were able to create a little bit more flexibility in your job. And that's really key. And a lot of people don't talk about this, but I was in a similar situation, right? Not quite as direct as yours, but I had some flexibility. I was a senior manager on my team, I was a group director or whatever. So I had employees who could do a lot of the heavy lifting. Now, I still had to come to the office and be present, but if I needed to come in late because I was touring a property or leave a little bit early, I had that flexibility. But the important thing was I was getting my work done, right?
Right.
Nothing from the business, the day-to-day job dropped. And I think the first insight there is you have to make sure you still deliver on your day job. Now you can find ways to create systems and processes and delegate where it's a little bit easier for you to, stay in that managerial role and make sure people are doing what they need to do to be successful. But you have to make sure the ball doesn't get dropped if you want to make that transition. The second thing is you have to have these systems and processes, whether it's in your day job, which is, great if you have that ability. Sometimes you may not, if you're in a position where you can't really, create or delegate work or have those processes, then you need to create it in your real estate business. And this is one of the reasons people invest passively, because it's a great way to start earning some money on the side while you're doing what you're doing. And then you can slowly make that transition over time. And I think no matter where you sit with how much time you have available, you can still leverage real estate to help you reach your end game goals there. The last thing I'll say is you talked about you had a goal of 6,000 a month, but you also looked at it, projecting outwards to say, okay, I got this property. In 3 years, this is what this is going to generate. This property will generate that in this year's. And it's really about, building that momentum and recognizing where you're going to be. And then ultimately, at some point, you're going to have to make that leap. So if you're taking those steps, moving in the right direction, at some point, you'll say, you know what, I was able to do this with, this amount of time. If I dedicated everything to this, then I should be able to reach my goals at that point. So really great
Yeah.
insights. And I think it's just a good way for people to think about how can you create more time and flexibility in what you're currently doing, whether that's delegating work, whether that's, sometimes people want to get a promotion. It's like, man, sometimes that promotion is not a good thing, right? If the responsibilities increase or the workload increases, sometimes you want to just stay in the position you're in where you can control your day a little bit more. So there's really good insights to help people think about how do you control your time so you can make that transition and create the lifestyle you actually want.
Yeah, and it's man, you bring up a really good point. You're reminding me of something here. Like in the last year in my W-2, I actually was recruited by another company that wanted me to come in and run a team for them. And it would have been a significant bump, right? Significant. But I would have had to go into the office. I was working from home 100% at the time. I would have had to go into the office and all these things. And it was really tempting, right? But I called my brother, my middle brother, and had a chat with him. And I was like, man, I'm interested in this, but I think it might set me back on my ultimate goal of leaving my W-2. Probably set me back 2 years. And he was like, hey, you just got to figure out what's most important to you. And ultimately, I didn't end up taking that because I valued the flexibility more than the income. And I'm looking back on it now, man. I'm really, really glad I did not take that job because I probably wouldn't be where I am today right now. It would have probably set me back at least 2 years for sure.
Yeah, man, that's great insight. And I'm glad you shared that because I'm sure there's a lot of people going through that, particularly where we're at right now with the economy. So if you are thinking about a job change or, pay increase or switching careers, make sure you are rooting that decision in your ultimate goals and
Right.
what's going to help you get there. So great insight. Let's talk about the portfolio now, right? You said you have over 900 units, which is amazing. Congratulations to you. For these properties, where are we at? We talked about Northern or North Carolina a little bit. Are they kind of all in that East Coast, Northern Carolina type market, or where exactly are your properties?
Yeah. So the vast majority of my properties are in North and South Carolina. I have a couple in Virginia, Southern Virginia, and one in Georgia and one in Alabama. But I'm highly, highly focused on North and South Carolina. We'll probably expand into Georgia a bit more over the coming years. Probably not into Alabama, probably not into Southern Virginia, just for different reasons. But I know the Carolinas inside and out. I've been here my whole life. And there's a ton of opportunity here. I mean, there's so much job and population growth in this area that really for me, there's no reason to go somewhere else. I may invest passively in other locations just to kind of diversify just personally. But I'm not actively looking to do anything in, say, the Midwest or Texas or anything like that.
Yeah. And Tim, one thing that always amazes me is just the amount of deals you're doing, right? I mean, you've got some phenomenal deal flow, particularly in a market where a lot of people are struggling to find deals and opportunities. So can you talk to us about, what do you credit that deal flow to, right? Is it just straight relationships? Is there something else that you're doing with underwriting? But how are you able to find so many good deals in a tight market?
Yeah, for me, I credit it to two things. One is I spent a lot of time building relationships, and not just broad relationships, very deep relationships with three brokers. I have three brokers in the Carolinas that I work with primarily. Not that I don't talk to other guys, I do. But these three guys bring me probably 90% of what I do. And then the second piece to that is these guys know that if they bring me something and I get it under contract, I'm going to close on it. And that has probably been the single biggest factor for me is just showing a record of performance. One of the biggest things with brokers is they get paid when things closed. So they want to go with people they know who will close. And I try to make their lives as easy as possible. When I get it under contract, I try to make sure that we close on time, and that there isn't a whole lot of chaos in the process. And honestly, especially over the last year, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from these three brokers that, man, you guys do what you say you're going to do. And honestly, John, there's been a few deals that have been very, very difficult. Either the sellers were difficult or lending was difficult. And a couple of them, were such that, the brokers even said, most guys would have walked away from these when things got hard. Most guys would have just walked, and we didn't. We closed. That it seems to be paying off. We're to a point now where some of the brokers call us literally when they're on their way to view a property to see if they can get the listing. And so they'll call and go, "Hey, I'm going to look at this. Here's the specifics. Here's the particulars on the asset. If I get this, would you be interested?" We're talking about getting first look, or that's pretty much direct to seller off market right there, and that's paid off for us.
I think that's really good feedback, right? Because you talked about building relationships and then took it a couple layers deep. One, doing what you say you're going to do, follow through, closing on the property, being easy to work with, recognizing that brokers only get paid when the transaction is closed. So the interest, that's fine, but they want people who they know are going to close, and you were able to build that. Now, for many listeners, they're starting out in their journey, and maybe they have some brokers they have relationships with. How deep those relationships are is questionable. So I want to dig a little bit deeper here, right? So when we talk about deep relationships with brokers, I want to understand what exactly does that mean? And when you were starting to build these relationships, how did you get over that hump to become the person that they believed in, that they trusted, that they would give, a good shot to on a deal?
Really, it's like anything else. It was just conversations, really, and prioritizing those conversations. People like to feel like they're appreciated, right? So I would have one guy in particular. I would call him and ask him questions like, "Hey, I'm looking at this property. What do you think?" And no, given guys, you got to remember they got to be willing to give you the time. And in these instances, they were. But then I made sure that they felt appreciated for giving me that time. So I'd call and talk to them about things. When they called me, I made sure I picked up those calls, or I at least called them back in a timely manner, just to make them, understand that I did appreciate the partnership. And then too, honestly, like I would do little things when they would talk to me. One guy in particular, he was talking to me. He just threw out something about his wife liking gourmet cookies. He's like, "My wife likes gourmet cookies. So you know what? Sent him a bottle of wine and some really, really expensive cookies. And just said, "Hey, here you go. Happy Merry Christmas," that kind of thing. And little things like that are appreciated, that was kind of the part of, building the deep relationship. And guys, this wasn't quick by any means. Probably took me a year to do a deal with that guy. But once I got the first one, we did it. We did it efficiently. We did it quick. He actually called us. He actually called us shortly after that deal closed. He's like, "Hey, I was doing the math. I'm a dollars per hour guy, and I just want you to know, you guys maybe about 4,000 an hour on that deal." And I'm like, well, congrats. I mean, thank you. But he appreciated that. And over time, we were able to build that. So really, it just came down to like respecting their time, prioritizing their time, and letting them know you were grateful for it.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that context. And just to clarify, you didn't buy those cookies, send them, and then have a deal sent to you the next day, right?
No, not at all. Not at
So,
all.
it's not like a bribe or anything, right? You're basically saying like, listen, you're building a relationship, but it's not bribery, right? You're not putting money in these guys' pockets saying, "Hey, make sure you send me the next deal." They still have to represent their clients, right? And those owners are not going to select you just because the brokers, says, "Hey, I like this guy." You still have to have a strong offer. You still have to have strong terms, and you still have to give them the confidence that you can close. But it helps to have a good relationship with those individuals and to be top of mind so you can get a crack at it maybe before everyone else starts to look. So I think those tips and insights are really good. Again, when you are trying to build a relationship, I think it's really important to focus on some of the things you talked about. So one, being prompt on a response, answer them, giving them feedback. If they call you or email you, call or email them back. You mentioned being intentional about the outreach, intentional about building a relationship. Make sure you figure out who those people are that you need to talk to and build those relationships. And I think the thing that I really think is a really just incredible insight, and it may seem simple and obvious, But you don't have to know everyone in North Carolina and South Carolina. You
No.
mentioned three broker relationships that you prioritize, and 90% of your deals come from those three people. And I think a lot of times people either only talk to one person and they feel like, well, I've reached out to this person, I've got a relationship, cool, he knows who I am, so I should be seeing great deals now. Doesn't work that way. But you focused on building a relationship with three, not 23, but three. And by having those relationships, you have enough deal flow coming through that allows you to keep closing on deals. We were joking because every time I see you and talk to you, I feel like you either are closing on a deal or you're about to close on a deal. And first thing I asked you when we got on in the green room, said, "Hey, you close anything lately?" You said, "Yeah, I closed something last Tuesday." So it just goes to show that, if you can build these relationships and stay persistent, you can find deals. Now, obviously, having a relationship is one aspect of it. You still have to find a way to be able to execute and make these deals work.
Right.
Most people are out here saying, "Hey, the deals just simply don't pencil." Even if I have good relationships, they're not penciling. I'm having a hard time getting the deals. How are you able to find that? Are you doing anything different with your underwriting, with your assumptions, or how are you able to get these deals to actually pencil for you?
Yeah, so part of it for me is knowing the market, right? Like I'm in the Carolinas. I find a lot of folks out of state trying to do deals in the Carolinas, and they just don't know the market as well as they should. Like for instance, I bought something in Raleigh that's near the university, North Carolina State University. Everybody thinks that that's all student housing. It's not. So I have a little bit of an advantage there because I know what that market is. So a lot of people shy away from it because they think it's student housing. And then two, they don't the like if you pull a CoStar report on that area, it's going to be off. Like CoStar is great, right? But it still does it only applies to, 80%, right? It doesn't, there's a 20% factor there that it may be off on. And if you know your market well, you can identify those. So that's one way that we probably have a little bit of an advantage and that we're a little different in our underwriting. And then two, we try to look for creative ways to manage the deals on that same property. It's a 53 unit property. I happen to know in that area that one bedrooms and studios do better than two bedrooms. So on that one, we're like, okay, it's 53 units, but 28 of these are two bedrooms. Let's convert these to one bedrooms and studios. And instead of getting 1,500 a month for that same space, we can do 2,000 a month. And most people don't see that. So yeah, we get creative with things. We also tend to know we're really good at asset management as well. So we're real confident in where we can drive expenses. So that's another place that we come in is we tend to find things that aren't being managed well, and we're able to go in and do just a better job with the management, quite frankly. So those are a couple of ways.
Yeah, those are good tips, man, because it comes down to seeing something that others don't see. And
Right.
that's giving you the confidence. And the confidence is key because the confidence is coming from a deep understanding of the market, a deep understanding of, what you should be seeing, knowing that one bedrooms actually rent for more than two bedrooms. So making that conversion, I'm sure other people who looked at that deal were not thinking about doing
No.
that play. So if you're going to look at a CoStar report and run the same play everyone else is running, yes, it's not going to pencil because everyone's going to look at the same exact thing. So you do have to have a bit of a creative eye and find some opportunities that maybe other people are missing. And it helps to have a deeper understanding of the market and where those values are. Tim, we kind of jokingly talk about you doing a bunch of deals, but I'm sure there are a bunch of deals that you get from these three brokers that you turn down. What
Sure.
percentage do you think that is? Like of the deals you get from them, which are the ones that you say, hey, you know what? It's not going to work. It's not going to be a fit. How many deals do you look at in general?
Um, we from these guys, I will say that they know what our buy box is very well. So we probably don't turn down a ton from them because we're not seeing it unless they know for sure that it fits our buy box. But as a whole, I mean, I'm doing a bunch of deals. But as a whole, I probably turn down or just don't even just napkin something, probably 80, 85% of the stuff I see, I don't even go after. Somebody sent me one last night actually, and within 2 minutes of looking at it, I'm like, no, not even going to look at that anymore. And that's the vast majority of what I see. I like you said, I'm doing a bunch of deals, but I'm also, I mean, by far and away 10 to 1 throwing stuff away. because
Yeah.
it just
I
doesn't
think
make
it's,
sense, right?
and it's just a good reminder, right? Like if you want to do more deals, you have to see more deals, right? It's
Right.
just the nature of the beast. You have to look at more deals if you want to find the ones that are actually worth pursuing. So
Right.
appreciate you sharing that, Tim. For folks who want to learn more about you, Tim, and check out, your company, you can check out his website, harvestpg.com. That's harvestpg.com. And then Tim's pretty active on LinkedIn as well. So we'll make sure we put his LinkedIn profile in the show notes there, and you can connect with Tim there. Tim, we're going to move on though to our round of insights. Are you
All
ready?
right. Yeah, I think so. Let's try it.
All right, Tim, give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
Failure was, we'll go back to 2008 9. The land stuff did not go well in 08 and 09. And that set me up for success because it taught me all about cash flow, like we talked about before, right? I was able to learn some very valuable and costly lessons. But it set me up. It set me up moving forward for sure.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
I would have to say my investor portal, Syndication Pro. There's a number of them out there, but Syndication Pro has been critical for us.
All right. Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Who Not How. 100% easy call. Mainly because we're in that phase where we're looking for a lot more who's as we scale up. So Who Not How.
What's a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
Morning workout. First thing I do when I get up in the morning, I got a garage gym, hit the garage gym, good 30, 45 minutes. And that gets my day started the right way.
All right. Give me your number one insight for multifamily investing.
Number one insight. I would say, again, I'll go back to it. Cash flow, guys. Make sure the property's cash flow. If they don't, maybe look for something else.
All right, Tim, you are in the Carolinas, so I'll let you pick wherever you want to go, but give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Favorite place to grab a bite to eat. I'm going to have to go with, oh man, that's a hard one, John. I thought I had something right there. Actually, I got to say, I'll go back to my alma mater. There's a place called, there's a taco place in Raleigh, right near NC State. It's called Jim Tacos. Love it.
All right, Jim's Tacos it is. Hey,
Yeah.
Listen, Tim, you gave us a lot of great information. I really enjoyed listening to you talk about the different asset classes of real estate that you tapped into before kind of really landing on multifamily and the focus on cash flow, particularly coming out of those raw land development deals. And then really what you're doing to find these deals, building those relationships and giving us some context to what it means to build a deep relationship with the broker and recognizing how you can create and add value for them. I just think those are really good insights that hopefully allow investors to be able to see more deals, analyze more opportunities, and then ultimately follow through so that they can be a player in the market. Again, Tim, if you want to connect with Tim or learn more, you can check out his website, harvestpg.com, or check him out on LinkedIn. Tim, I just want to thank you again for coming on Multifamily Insights. We look forward to staying in touch. And of course, we'll see you again soon.
All right, John, thanks for having me, bud.